The Seahawks did what they do best, win at home in December. They hand the Eagles just their second loss of the season. Ravens looked to stay in the playoff hunt when they took on the Lions in Charm City. Flacco with a solid day under center. Titans trying to keep their hold in the AFC South as they took on the Texans in Nashville, and they handled Houston in a key win for Tennessee. Geno took over for Eli Manning, and, well, it went about as well as you'd expect. But a new coach and new GM are on the way for the Giants, something probably overdue. The Vikings look like the best team in the NFC against the Falcons. Could they have home field advantage throughout the whole playoffs? Gronk had 147 yards, but everyone's going to remember this cheap shot that got him suspended for a game. Patriots, though, beat the Bills. Packers are still somehow alive as they await the return of Aaron Rodgers. Can they make a late season run at a wild card berth? The Chiefs are in complete free-fall, and hey, the Jets are still in the playoff hunt, while the Chiefs, are they even going to make the playoffs this year after falling apart of late? Jimmy G got off to a great start against the Bears as the 49ers escaped with a narrow and hard-fought win in Chicago. The Broncos, on the other hand, are a complete mess. Should there be questions about first-year head coach Vance Joseph? One thing's for sure, the quarterback play is awful in Denver. Jags took home an easy win against the Colts to move to 8-4. The Saints got the big win they were looking for as Alvin Kamara continues his run towards Rookie of the Year. What a year for Kamara. The Rams got a key divisional win on the road as they move to 9-3 as they hang on in the NFC West and maybe, just maybe, get a bye in the NFC. The Chargers beat the Browns in Josh Gordon's first game back. Boy, he looked great, but the Chargers win. And in a game marred by a scary injury and illegal hits, the Steelers came back to beat the Bengals. Highlights from that game, fantasy talk, and much more coming up on NFL Daily right now.
Did you know that ticket prices can actually go down right before the game? That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime tracks ticket prices in real time from thousands of trusted sellers, then shows you all the best deals. So we can get tickets at the last minute for up to 60% off. Download Gametime now.
Jump right into some Monday Night Football highlights here. Early first quarter, big mistake. Big Ben picked off by Adam Jones, but it's Bengals Steelers, and there's always extracurricular activity. Lev Bell, Vontaze Burfict kind of going at it. Bell knocks over Burfict. There's a flag. Get used to that in this one here, but a very scary moment in this one. Ryan Shazier levels the hit. He stays down, grabbing his bag. He had to be carted off the field. The good news is he does have some movement now in his leg, so scary moment, but at least some positive momentum they're going forward for Ryan Shazier.
Yeah, for sure. From what we've heard, he will be okay, but it's really scary to see that kind of stuff.
You saw one Adrian Green touchdown. There is a second one as well. Bengals up 17-0 at the half. Is it an upset? Steelers don't quit, all right? Big Ben checks it down to Lev Bell, and he's going to get tackled. Well, the Bengals just stopped. I don't really know what's going on. William Jackson was like, I thought he was out of bounds. He wasn't, though. His foot stays in bounds. Touchdown, Lev Bell. Steelers going to that lead. 17-10 now. Andy Dalton with time to A.J. Green. It's a critical touchdown, except that there's a holding on the play, and it gets called back. Doesn't count. Critical mistake there. And then there's the JuJu Smith-Schuster hit on Vontaze Burfict. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. A taunting flag there as well. Fourth quarter, Big Ben to Antonio Brown. Luka gets flagged for that hit. He was also ejected, or suspended as well, just like Smith-Schuster. And then Chris Boswell drills the game-winning field goal. The Steelers come back after the Bengals find a way to blow a 17-0 lead and lose 23-20 in classic Bengals fashion.
Classic Bengals fashion. So I tweeted out before this game even started, describe Andy Dalton in a GIF, and man, I was just getting all sorts of pretty sad GIFs. After the first half, I was like, man, I'm probably going to eat my words here. I mean, he's got 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, and this Bengals team looked good. They just didn't show up in the second half, and then just Le'Veon Bell just absolutely took over this game. And again, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown right now, probably the best wide receiver running back combination in the league, just so dominant.
Steelers win that one 23-20, folks. I'm Tom Downey. Alongside me is Mitchell Renz. We got a great show for you guys today. We got special guest Sigmund Bloom coming on to talk some fantasy football.
Dude.
We'll talk some waiver wire stuff. We'll talk some playoff picture as well.
Yes, sir.
We're also going to talk more about that JuJu Smith-Schuster hit. That's kind of the main talking point right now around the NFL. Before we get to that, today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app today. It is the best way to get last-minute sports and concert tickets. The app tracks ticket prices in real time from thousands of trusted sellers and then shows you all the best deals. It's on iPhone or Android right now. It's up to 60% off compared to the other ticketing app prices.
Other ticketing app prices for sure. I mean, it is an unbelievable app. Before I came on the show here, Tom, I was on the app checking for tickets. If you want to go, just saying, if you want to go to a Dallas Stars game on January 2nd, it's $8.
Yeah, I'm going to that game. I already bought my tickets. Yeah, I'm going.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want an invite.
I'm from Ohio.
Oh, man, dude. We got to go to that game. But, I mean, seriously, you can get tickets for under $10 to go watch professional hockey. Unbelievable.
All right, folks. Again, today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app. Chatsports.com/tickets to get the app today. We'll talk now about JuJu Smith-Schuster. He has been suspended 1 game by the NFL for his hit on Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict. A very controversial hit. I want to get your guys' comments as well. Do you think he deserved the 1-game suspension? You can chime in now. If you haven't seen the hit, we'll show it to you now as well. This is what they call the old crack black block. Look, it's in the 4th quarter. You'll see after kind of a delayed here. Bledbell, Burfict, Smith-Schuster, big hit there. We'll show you to you in slow-mo. When I first saw it, I thought, wow, good crackback block. And then I went, ooh, his helmet's a helmet. And that's the issue with that hit. And then the taunt as well, Mitchell.
Yeah, the taunt's bad. And I think it's one of those things. I mean, Burfict has definitely laid his plenty share of bad hits. But I felt the exact same way, Tom. When I watched it live, I was like, man, that's just a clean, great hit. Then when you slow it down, you do see the helmet-to-helmet contact there. I will say, I don't know if he would have been suspended if it wasn't for the taunt, because the taunt made it look like it was really, really intentional.
I actually totally agree with you, and I think that the taunt added to the play. And look, he got an extra penalty for it because of that, because you can't taunt like that. I have issues here as well with this, and I see Brandon Fiesta, friend of the show, commenting there was no helmet-to-helmet contact. There was. Not with the original view. When you see the slow-mo replay, you do see helmet there. At first, it looks like a good shoulder-to-chest hit. The helmet did get contact there, though. I think that's why he was suspended as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, agree. It wasn't. I don't think it was like your typical like head-on, helmet to helmet.
No, it wasn't.
But any time in the NFL,
it wasn't the full-on targeting.
No, correct. But the rule states when your helmet collides or hits the other helmet of the player, that's helmet to helmet, and unfortunately, like that's the rule. Again, the taunt though definitely made it worse.
I think without the taunt, I think you're right, Mitchell. He doesn't get suspended, but you can see helmet to there. It goes right into the face mask there. I was actually maybe a little bit surprised there was a suspension. And I think you're right. Without the taunt, there isn't one. I think this, like 10 years ago, that is not a penalty. There's no fine. There's no suspension whatsoever. That is the old school, good, clean play. Today's NFL, it's not.
And again, I think it's also the Steelers-Bengals rivalry. Like we know, I mean, we're talking about Antonio Brown was knocked out of a game last season. Or 2 years ago. And now, like, when you see just how physical these games are, the refs are looking for it. And, man, I was actually surprised he didn't get tossed out of the game, like, right after it.
Wanted that. I'll add this as well. We're not going to show you the Georgia Iloka hit. He did that as well on Antonio Brown. He is also now serving a 1-game suspension. Of course, both players will appeal. This is an issue overall with Bengals versus Steelers. These are two teams that constantly find their way into things, and it's not just the Bengals, it's not just the Steelers. Both these teams have had these issues. Vontaze Burfict, of course, gets quite a bit of attention because it's Burfict. That's he is. Let's call it.
Well, he's known for those kind of hits.
Yeah, that's what he is.
He's a dirty player.
Yeah,
he's a good player, but he's dirty.
I saw a lot of Twitter comments from not just random fans, but from like full-on verified people saying, you know what, Burfict had it coming, and I really don't like that. That's too far.
No, and I agree. And that's again like. Do I think it was a clean hit? No. Do I think it was a 100% dirty hit? Again, like not really. I think it's hard football. But when he taunts, it looks like he had the intent to actually hurt him, which is what I do not like. If you have an intent to hurt somebody in the NFL, you deserve to be suspended a game. I'm sorry. There's a difference between laying a hit and actually going out and trying to injure somebody.
I think there's some very differing reactions here. I only see a couple fair punishments, but I see no suspension, and I see not enough leading the way, which makes me believe in the end, if both sides hate the ruling, they probably got it right.
Yeah, again, 1-game suspension, I thought, for the hit. I don't know if it would have been just the hit. Yeah, I don't think he would have deserved to be suspended. But with the taunt added on to that, to me, he had the intent to hurt him. For that, you get suspended.
All right, folks. One more note here on suspensions. Rob Gronkowski's appeal was denied. He will serve his 1-game suspension. We're going to get back to some more NFL talk here. Let's talk some fantasy football here, Mitchell, with a special guest with Sigmund Bloom. Let's bring him on in.
Hey everyone, I want everybody to please welcome in a special guest and a good friend of mine, also from Pennsylvania. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom, my man Sigmund Bloom, co-owner of footballguys.com and host of The Audible. Sig, thank you so much for joining us, my man. How's it going?
Oh, it's great. This is the time of year, like there's life and there's death and then there's fantasy football. And we pour over everything that screws tighten, and we just have to be careful to not use our intellects against ourselves, because we all know a lot about football and it can lead us down the wrong path. And it's time to simplify and get back to our instincts. As if you survive this long, you're probably pretty good at fantasy football.
Yeah, I mean, I like to believe so. I don't know about you, but I'm actually still alive in the Scott Fish Bowl.
I'm not. I lost 7 points. I got knocked out of the playoffs by Dave Major. 7 points. And I'm trying to think what decision I will. It was, I think, Tariq Cohen, putting him on the bench. I was smart enough to draft him, and I wasn't smart enough to play him. But these are the things that haunt us until next year when we get a chance to clear our names again.
Nah, man, I definitely hear it. Luckily, I started Nelson Aguilar this past week, so that was a big win for me in that league. I also started Gronk, but I'm not going to have him this week. The fantasy football rumors, we do a lot of fantasy football rumors here in general, and I have a podcast called Fantasy Football Rumors Podcast that I do with Tom Downey. The first one that I got for you, Sig, is we saw Josh Gordon this past week. He looked pretty good. Are you going to trust him in fantasy playoffs?
Yes. Yes, you are. And look, last week we can see as his floor, and that was facing Casey Hayward, one of the best corners in the NFL, who said that Gordon was the toughest matchup he had all year. And that was Gordon not playing for over 2 years, and he had never played with DeShone Kizer in a game. And Kizer, for all of his inaccuracy, is a bold quarterback, throwing downfield, throwing outside the numbers. I think Gordon had 11 targets in that game. So if you have a lot of factors, if we look at last week's game as a floor, 4 for 80 or 90, whatever it was, and if Kizer and Gordon get on the same page, or if facing a Green Bay corner instead of Casey Hayward, or if Gordon just knocks off some rust because he hadn't played in so long, he looked like 80 or 90% of prime Josh Gordon, which is one of the best 5 receivers in the NFL. And it was all those athletic abilities, it was technique, actually, even instincts, ball skills. It was all there. That was the Josh Gordon that we were used to. So sure, if I have him in, I'm risking, I don't know, with the targets he gets, a 3 for 40 or 3 for 30 is his floor. But if it clicks this week, you're potentially leaving 9 for 200 on your bench. We saw it with Brian Hoyer. DeShone Kizer can be as good as Brian Hoyer.
And I think it's a crazy world. I talked about it earlier today with Tom on our podcast, and we agree. I mean, Josh Gordon's upside is definitely there. And I mean, considering the fact that, like you said, Casey said that he was one of the toughest matchups that he's had this year, if not the toughest. And the fact that he hasn't played since December 21st of 2014 is pretty amazing. But I want to move on to the next fantasy rumor I got for you. Again, this is the playoffs, so Sig, we know this is the time where we need to make our money. Is there anybody on the waiver wire right now that you would want to pick up, maybe just for this week to help you get by, or just you think there's somebody who has really good matchups that you think maybe is on the waiver wire in most leagues?
Yeah, and this is obviously, you mentioned Rob Gronkowski. This is a really relevant question if you have Rob Gronkowski. It's a really relevant question if you have Zach Ertz, who had a concussion last week. So tight end's the position I would zero in on. Of course, and look at running back, Mike Davis and Peyton Barber, and we're going to wait and see about Tampa. Hopefully, Peyton Barber was so clearly better than Doug Martin was at any point this year that he should start this week against Detroit. Detroit has a poor run defense, so I'd feel comfortable with him. And I'd feel comfortable with Mike Davis against Jacksonville, because I think Russell Wilson's going to have to pull a rabbit out of the hat. Mike Davis has been there for him in the passing game. You're going to run the ball and try to be a little more balanced against Jacksonville, not test their corners. So all those things, I would say that Davis and Barber are going to be squarely in my running back 2 ranks this week, and trustworthy, assuming we don't get the banana in the tailpipe with Doug Martin, and we'll wait and see on that. But tight end, Steven Anderson's got to be out there. C.J. Fedorowicz is out for the year. The Texans lost 2 wide receivers last week. Anderson was actually playing some wide receiver. Tom Savage is a gunner. Say what you will about Savage. He's not afraid to throw and throw and throw. And Steven Anderson, I think. And I also want to point out that on the waiver wire, you maybe you don't have Gronk or Ertz, but maybe you're facing somebody who does, and you might pick up Steven Anderson to block them. to play defense on the waiver wire. This is a time to think about defense. Also, at tight end, David Njoku. We just talked about Josh Gordon. It's like 6 degrees of Josh Gordon. Gordon's opening things up for David Njoku, and they're finally using him more. I think he's somebody that you could look at on the waiver wire. And if Ertz is out, Trey Burton. And this is Philadelphia. They've been very productive to the tight end. I think Burton caught a touchdown whenever Ertz was out earlier this year against Denver. So tight end, it's a position when you need there to be someone there on the waiver wire if you have Gronkowski or Ertz. And there's more than one name that could help you out and easily finish in the top 10 at the position this week.
No, I like that you brought up the tight ends because, again, I said myself Cameron Brate was a guy who we consider because he was a top 6 tight end with Jameis Winston. And then we saw once Jameis was injured, now again, he was just not relevant, and now 2 touchdowns this past week. The guy who I really like as a streaming option, if you maybe, let's say, have Aaron Rodgers like I do in a league, I'm hoping he comes back week 15. Love Jimmy Garoppolo week 14 against the Texans. They give up the most fantasy points. 2 quarterbacks. The last fantasy rumor I got for you is, Sig, are you a believer in start your studs? So I get hit up often on Twitter, probably not as much as you do with questions, but I always get asked, should I start this guy? Or, should I start Julio Jones? Should I start Keenan Allen? Or when it comes to studs, are you a guy in the playoffs, you start him?
Yes, but there aren't as many studs as we think. Or not everybody we drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds is automatically a stud. And I think looking at the last 3 or 4 weeks and the trends should allow us to classify correctly who is a stud right now and who isn't, right? So take someone like Mike Evans. Evans hasn't done anything in about 6 weeks. Jameis Winston spread the ball around very well. Evans might see a lot of Darius Slay in this one. So you might have spent a first-round pick on Mike Evans. Is he a stud that you have to play this week? If you're looking at another player you have, like Robbie Anderson, I would argue that Robbie Anderson, and it's the and what one of the things I want to emphasize too, and we'll see whether the football gods show me to be the false prophet here and saying things to you that are going to be being useless, or this is something to keep in mind. But I think that if you're clinging too much to what we believed in August and September, when we have 13 weeks of football, 12 games for each one of these teams, including the most recent games with the personnel they have with injuries and things like that, so you know what we're dealing with. I'll give you another example, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt looked like somebody there's no way you're going to bench Kareem Hunt in September. But what do we have when we look at Kareem Hunt now? I think we have someone who's probably on your bench. So always start your studs, but know who is a stud. And don't just go on where you drafted them. Don't just go on what you thought about them. And likewise with matchups. Denver was a matchup that we would have avoided. And you would have said, I'm Josh McCown, Robbie Anderson with the playoffs on the line. There's no way I'm playing those guys. But now you have to look what's going on. Blake Bortles against Seattle. No way. Give me a 20-foot pole. I'm not going to touch Blake Bortles. But yet, Seattle's defense isn't the one we saw going into the year. So be in the now, and I think that's going to guide you more. And don't be afraid of going against what we believed in August and September.
No, I actually love that answer, and it's one that I talked with Tom about. I mean, think about the world that we live in, because we said Robbie Anderson today on our podcast, and I said Robbie Anderson, or Julio Jones. And I mean, last week, if you would have said, you know what I mean? Like Robbie Anderson went absolutely off, and Julio Jones against a tough matchup, 2 for 24. So I agree. I think you need to live in the now. And I mean, we talked about Keenan Allen versus Julio Jones, rest of the season in the playoffs, and we both went with Keenan Allen. And I think that's living with the now. But Sig, that's all the time I got for you, and that's all the time I got for this segment right here for Fantasy Football. We're going to get back into the NFL Daily, but before I go, I really want to say thank you so much. I see that you're in Austin, Texas, so anytime you want to get together, we're located here in Dallas. You let me know, my man. But if there's anything else that you need from us or anything else you need from me, I would definitely be happy to help out. Until then, guys, please follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. Again, he's the co-owner of footballguys.com, and he's the host of The Audible. Thank you, my man. Thank you so much.
Great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And a big thank you to Sigmund Bloom for coming on today's show. It was a happy to have him on, Mitchell.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's also from PA, and he lives here in Texas. So hopefully we can get together, maybe share some drinks and share some fantasy knowledge. It'd be awesome.
All right, you mentioned fantasy. Let's talk a little bit more about that right now. It's the fantasy playoffs for, I think, almost everyone right now, unless you got kind of a weird league. Let's see what some waiver wire options here. If you're trying to get one more guy, be it a bench option, maybe even be just a full-on starter for you if you want to go along that route. We'll start here. Let's go with Mike Davis, the Seahawks halfback. You're not super high on him, despite him now being the lead back for Seattle.
Yeah, well, so he is going to be the lead running back right now for Seattle because Chris Carson is not going to be ready week 14. But here's the thing, right? So, like, the Seahawks team, I just think they're a better offense when they just start airing it out and they let Russell Wilson take over.
Agreed.
I will say Mike Davis did impress me in this game against the Eagles because the Eagles are a legit front. Like, they have a great defense, and he was making moves on them that, was making this team look silly. But, again, I mean, the 16 carries, 64 yards, the 4 receptions I like when you have in a PPR league that gives you a safe floor. But, again, I think this one's a little bit risky to me.
My approach is simple. If you can get a starting halfback at the waiver wire at this point in the year, you go ahead and do it. You don't really need to start him, but I think he's better than a bench option than several other options that are on most people's benches right now, unless you're in like an 18 league.
True. No, I can agree with that. I mean, again, though, for me, he's a flex at best.
That's fair. Let's get now to a former Seattle Seahawks member, Jermaine Kearse, the Jets wide receiver. He's been great as of late, Mitchell.
He has been great, man. Like, we're talking so last week, one of my starts of the week, 9 catches, 157 yards, right? In the last 2 weeks, he's really kind of emerged as a guy that has been trustworthy for Josh McCown, and that we've seen this Jets offense be actually, like, I don't even want to say decent because they've been better than decent. They've been very good. I mean, 16 catches, 263 yards and a touchdown over the last 2 weeks, and now you see now they have Denver. Sure, Denver's a tough matchup. If Marshawn Lattimore's not healthy for the Saints, that could be a great matchup. And the Chargers have been putting up points as well. I think he could get potential garbage points. But again, this guy is more of a flex play at the best going forward.
Another guy here, we'll head back now to the halfbacks. Peyton Barber has all of a sudden become the Bucs lead back because Doug Martin has a concussion. It wasn't Jaquiz Rodgers. It's Barber who got the work. Anyway, had a really good game.
Not only did he have a really good game, he looked really, really good. He passed the eye test for me. I mean, this guy ran hard, and I'm a big believer in Doug Martin, or at least I was, but from what I saw from Peyton Barber, he was clearly the better running back. And, I mean, you heard Sig talk about him. Like, Peyton Barber, I think right now, is the better running back than Doug Martin, which is tough to say. But, I mean, again, you're getting 20 carries and 4 catches. Sign me up for that in the playoffs. I think he could actually be a flex, or maybe even an RB2.
That's fair. All right, let's get down to the difference. We'll go to quarterback now. Look, it's late in the year. People have the occasional desire to stream players, be it a quarterback or tight end. If you're going to stream a quarterback, it is Jimmy Garoppolo this week, and I think really going forward, too.
No, and I think that's a good point. So, like, I'm a guy who has Aaron Rodgers, and I hope Aaron Rodgers can come back in Week 15. And guess what? If Aaron Rodgers plays, I'm going to play him. But if I need to get to that bridge just to next week, Jimmy Garoppolo is a great guy going up against the Houston Texans, who give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. 293 yards, sure, no touchdowns, but 49ers won this game against the Bears defense, who is very good at home.
An underrated Bears defense.
An underrated Bears defense, who's even better at home, going up against a Houston team that, man, they've been giving up a lot of points. I like Jimmy G as a streamer this week.
All right, so those are your 4 waiver wire options this week in fantasy football. Folks, I want to remind you that today's show was brought to you by the Gametime app. Get it today. It is the best way, and really the only way to go if you need last-minute sports or concert tickets. The app tracks ticket prices in real time from thousands of trusted sellers, meaning you're going to get the lowest price guaranteed. Download Gametime for iPhone or Android now. Last-minute tickets up to 60% off. You can find it in the App Store or go to chatsports.com/tickets.
No, and that's what I mean. Like, I was on this app, and I'm going, so you guys know, like, I'm going home in a few days. Really excited, going to be in Philadelphia. I'm going to go to the Philadelphia 76ers game, Tom.
Nice.
$26.
Ooh.
I'm going to get to go watch the
right
Sixers. Oh, dude. I mean, like, the Sixers, I'm all about trusting that process, and you guys should trust the process that is Gametime, because you're not going to find a better deal.
All right, folks, once again, chatsports.com/tickets. We talked some about fantasy football. Let's turn now to the real football side of things, in particular the playoff picture. Here's how things stand right now in the AFC. You have your 4 division leaders. He's factoring all the tiebreakers and all that crazy, chaotic stuff that, don't really matter now, but they will in a few weeks. Steelers are still the number 1 seed in the AFC, Mitchell.
Still the number 1 seed, but that may change, Tom. The Steelers and the Patriots play next week, Week 15, which is going to be a very, very juicy matchup. Other big games to watch. Week 17, the Jaguars and the Titans are going to face off against each other. And then the Chiefs right now, Tom, they've lost 6 of the last 7 games. And The Raiders, Chiefs, and Chargers is a very, very interesting one. So they're all obviously 6-6, all in the same division. But the Chiefs, they were able to beat the Chargers. The Chargers beat the Chiefs, and then I believe the Raiders lost to the Chargers. So it is just like this crazy three-way going. It's an interesting picture going forward, though.
Look, the AFC West, I thought was going to be the best division in football this year.
It's ugly.
Has it not been the case? Denver has totally fallen apart. Chargers have played much better as of late. The Raiders have not been the team almost everyone thought they were going to be in. Kansas City started the year so hot, and they have fallen apart since then.
Absolutely just fallen apart. I mean, where's Kareem Hunt? I have no idea, but man, I love seeing Phillip Rivers. He's absolutely balling right now. I mean, they're 6-2 in their last 8 games, and Phillip Rivers, Keenan Allen coming on strong.
So Pittsburgh Patriots, I think the two very obvious frontrunners in the AFC.
Yeah.
Titans, Jags, frankly, are probably going to battle to be the 3 seed or the 5 seed right now because, well, the 6-6 AFC West isn't going to catch them in time. And that's going to be a fun battle. A Week 17 matchup between Tennessee and Jacksonville could decide who gets a home game in the playoffs, who goes on the road in the wild card. Baltimore, I think, even though they're only 7-5 with a 1-game lead, I think they're in great shape.
I think they're in pretty good shape, too. Their schedule is favorable.
It is.
They do play the Steelers, though, this week, which will be a tough matchup. But they did just lose Jimmy Smith. That scares me. Because he is a very, very good defender. But, I mean, this team, again, they've won 3 straight games. Joe Flacco played well. I mean, Cam Rodgers always says Joe Flacco in December. I still don't want to.
The good news, after Pittsburgh, they go play the Browns, the Colts, and the Bengals.
No, man.
They should have 10
should be
wins
3
this
wins.
year. Worst case, they're going to get to 9 wins, I think. And I don't think Buffalo's going to finish with 9 wins this year.
Yeah, no, I really don't. Especially if, what's his name? Peterman's going to be the
Peterman.
quarterback. But again, like the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Chiefs, they're all going to beat up each other the next 3 to 4 weeks. So.
All right, so that is your AFC playoff picture. Let's head now to the NFC with a much more competitive, and I am super excited to watch this playoff battle. There is nothing solidified right now whatsoever.
It's fun, man. Like, the Vikings right now have the tiebreaker over the Eagles because of like strength of victory or something crazy like that.
They played a harder schedule in the end.
Correct. But, I mean, like you're talking about like the Cowboys, I wrote an article today, like they actually have a decent chance of getting into the playoffs if they win out. Like, of course, certain things have to go the right way. Green Bay right now, they play the Browns. They get Aaron Rodgers back week 15, man. Like, I do not want to play that Packers team if Aaron Rodgers is there. The Lions are the one team where I don't think are really in the chase. And, again, the Falcons have a really tough schedule. I mean, like, they have to go play, I believe, the Saints twice and the Panthers. That's really tough. But another interesting matchup is the Rams and the Seahawks. They will play, I believe, in next week or week 16.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few overlap here because, again, you've got 3 different NFC South teams on here. You got games with the Eagles, Vikings, Panthers, Seahawks. There's some overlap there. Again, we just saw the Eagles lose to the Seahawks. The Cowboys have games against Seattle and the Eagles down the stretch. The Lions' schedule in particular, I want to mention them here because the Lions sitting there at 6-6, they're 2 games back, but their schedule is super favorable.
Yes.
Bucks, Bears, Bengals, home against the Packers. There's a real chance Detroit wins out and sneaks in. If not, they could be a 9-win team.
See, here's the thing, though. Like, Matthew Stafford's banged up, and I'm a little bit worried about I'm a little bit worried about his health, and I feel like the Lions are going to lose a game before they play the Packers. And I'll tell you right now, if Aaron Rodgers is on the field week 17 against the Lions
with something to play for,
I'm taking Aaron Rodgers all day, and I think the Lions will just find a way to lose at least one of the games before that. I think the Lions end up with 8 wins.
A much stronger conference this year is the NFC. I'm excited to see how everything's break down.
It's so much fun.
It's not going to be solidified till week 17 with several key spots. Could even be week 16 before we get teams actually clinching their divisions.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
It's awesome.
I mean, I think
outside of the Eagles, excuse me.
Outside.
They don't count.
They don't count.
Maybe the Vikings do that. But that's your NFC playoff picture. All right, folks, once again, I'm Tom Downey. Alongside me is Mitchell Renz. Thank you all for stopping by. If you missed anything, be it the Steelers-Bengals highlights, some JuJu Smith-Schuster discussion, or interview with Sigmund Bloom, stay tuned. We're going to play this show over again in just a little bit, so don't go anywhere. But for producer Lana and Mitchell, I'm Tom Downey. You guys stay classy out there.